you order them back to work under their existing agreement, which continues them being unpaid for those activities, and then you put out a statement saying nobody should work for free, you knew they were working for free. They told you in those meetings. Are you familiar with the term gaslighting?
We've been told that Patty Hajdu is one of the most disliked politicians in the entire House, and today showed exactly why. She came into committee with her usual smug and dismissive attitude, but one Conservative after another ripped apart her answers and exposed glaring contradictions in her own department. By the end, she probably wished she had called in sick instead. Let's take a look.
Minister, has ESDC completed all internal investigations into ESDC employees who fraudulently applied for SERB while fully employed?
Turn to you.
Yes, we have completed.
All completed?
That one.
How many ESDC employees in total were investigated for improperly receiving SERB?
I would have to get back to you with the total number investigated, but
Please provide that
the total
information to the
number
committee.
that we took action against was approximately 50.
And you'll provide that information
Yes.
to the committee?
Yes.
Okay. So how many were cleared and how many had security clearances revoked and how many were formally terminated?
Again, that information is available. I'd be happy to provide it to the committee. It was approximately 50 employees that we took action
And
against.
one last question. Were any cases referred to the RCMP or other law enforcement agencies for potential criminal investigation? Please provide that information
Yes,
to the committee.
we can provide that as well.
If so, what the status of those referrals are, please.
All right, so we start out with a bit of a bang. So years after it was learned that there was fraudulent activity taken from public servants that were giving themselves SERB, right? Remember this? Instead of actually giving it to people that the government, designated actually needed it because of all the lockdowns and all the other terrible policies that they put in during COVID. Yeah, that. We learned that there's over 50 employees. And have you fired any? Have you taken action? Well, we took action. How many were fired? Well, I don't have that information on. That'd be good for information to have on you, don't you think? Probably a good number to have in your head. But okay, fine. So it'd be interesting to see what those numbers are when they actually get to committee. Hopefully we will see some of the transparency there. For privacy reasons, we're probably not going to know who was fired, but we should know how many were fired, hopefully. And since this is committing fraud on the government, that charge that Justin Trudeau should have been charged with, back during the Aga Khan's account. Yeah, that one. This sounds like fraud on the government because you're literally stealing government money when you shouldn't be. So that could potentially be 50 criminal charges. Anyone have any optimism that these people are going to be charged for what they did? Well, if Justin Trudeau's not going to be, then, I'm not surprised that other public servants are not going to be. Anyhow, that's the opening salvo, folks. So there's your opening anger pill. Apologies for that, but I thought it was important that Canadians actually know how many public servants were actually found to be defrauding our taxpayer dollars and putting it in their own pocket. 50.
Mr. Janis for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, is the government planning to increase EI premiums in the coming year? You said...
Your mic's not on.
Right. No, there's an annual process that the EI commissioners undergo, and so we'll have more to say.
Yeah, it's ultimately the decision of the government. I know there's a process by which recommendations are made. Would you So just to understand your response, are you saying no decision has been made yet, or are you saying the government will not increase EI premiums?
Saying is that we will wait to hear what the Commission says.
Okay, so you're not prepared to rule out an EI premium increase?
What I would say is the Chief Actuarian will advise the government, and we will listen to the experts and determine the next steps at that time.
Okay, but the government will make a political decision ultimately in response to whatever feedback they get. So it sounds like you're saying that you would be open to either possibility based on the advice you get. Is that correct?
What I would say is the commissioners set the rate, and we will have more to say in September when that happens.
Okay, I would say that based on the situation in the economy, the challenges around employing people, that it would be a terrible time to increase EI premiums, and I'm sure you'll be hearing more feedback on that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to be expecting the government to hear more feedback on that. And the fact that she's not just outright saying no, like reducing them would probably, help Canadians, but increasing them, not a great idea. And I can even accept maintaining them. But the last thing you should be doing is increasing them. Why? Look at all these people that are losing their jobs and having to collect. And look at all the people that are in an affordability crisis, and you want to increase EI premiums, basically one more thing to take out of their pay. But I imagine they're going to be going up. Why? Because of all the people that are having to go on EI. Because of all of these terrible policies, because Carney can't get a deal done with Trump, because of all the tariffs that are on this country. I imagine they're going to have to go up because they're going to have to find a way to pay for it. But $500 million to the European Space Agency, that's a priority. So now, this is speculative, but I'm just reading the tea leaves based on the budget and the amount of people that are going on EI, and the fact that the unemployment rate keeps going up. So hopefully I'm wrong. We'll see.
Mr. Seaback for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In your opening statement, Minister, you talked about how important fair bargaining is. Yet you used Section 107 preemptively to order the flight attendants back to work under their existing contract and took away their right to strike. How do you square that circle that you care about fair bargaining when you took away the right to strike, which is an integral part of fair bargaining?
I'm not sure if you were in the room when I mentioned that the first piece of legislation in 2016 that I had the pleasure of finalizing, it was the first piece that we introduced, was to reverse the union busting bills of Stephen Harper, 525 and 377.
But with all due respect, that's not my question. My question is, based on your statement you just made earlier today, how important fair bargaining is. How can you say how important fair bargaining is and take away a union's right to strike? By ordering them back to work.
I think I've also mentioned that 97% of disputes that arrive at the Federal Mediation Service are resolved without any work stoppage at all.
Do you know how tone deaf you sound to flight attendants when you won't answer a direct question and you tap dance around with other statistics? You ordered flight attendants back to work under their existing collective agreement before they even exercised their right to strike. It was preemptive. And then you have the audacity to come to this committee and say how important fair bargaining is. How do you justify that to the flight attendants, that you care about fair bargaining, but you ordered them back to work and took away their right to strike?
I think the best deal is the deal that the two parties arrive at the table. And I've been clear about that. And
Except
in
in
fact,
that
our party has
circumstance.
stood up for that. Not
Except
only
in that
have we
circumstance.
reversed union busting legislation that Stephen Harper presented and that many of the members praise, but we've also, as you know, passed anti-scab legislation.
Which we voted for.
Which is great.
Yeah, great.
And that's exactly what
Good.
we would hope, that we would see all parties stand up for collective bargaining rights.
How do you justify your belief in fair bargaining and the best deals are made at the table when you took that away by eliminating the collective process and ordering them back to work under the existing collective agreement?
Look, there are very few disputes that result in the need for government action, and I believe that governments of all stripes have found themselves in this place where both parties declare themselves at an impasse. That is exactly what happened.
You've used it 8 times in 14 months. No other government in the history of this country has done that.
Well, in fact, there was a lot of labor action under
No, there was only one Section 107.
I will just say this. Section 107 says that the minister, where the minister deems it expedient, may do things to secure industrial peace. What do you say to the organized labor members that are working in auto plants or other kinds of facilities or other kinds of organizations? What do you say when there is labor disruption that impacts the entire economy
the flight attendants,
of Canada?
I don't think the auto sector is not affected by a flight attendant strike.
And I would say that these are reserved for extremely rare circumstances.
Okay, Minister.
Kyle Seaback, he is a bulldog, folks. Bulldog. And this is him just charging ahead at Patty Hajdu and her party's BS, right? They sit back and they say, oh, you know, unions have a right to strike and blah, 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 and collective bargaining and blah, blah, blah. But we've been commenting on this as they've happened. They keep legislating them back to work. Remember the NDP Jagmeet Singh was like, okay, if they do it one more time, and they did it one more time. Okay, well, you know, if they really did it, come on. They are such hypocrites when it comes to this, and this is why they lost a lot of the union vote. Because unions were like, screw you guys. You're not here for us. And we got to talk about the root cause of this. So 8 times. They've had to use it 8 times. And Patty Hajdu was like, well, what do you say to these people? I say that your bad policies put these people in this position in the first place. Because the problem is when you have unions and they have fixed contracts and fixed increases, and then you put something in there like, oh, hyperinflation as a result of doubling the historic national debt of Canada and adding $600 billion of new debt that you try and justify via quote-unquote COVID spending, and then inflation skyrockets and everything goes up. Now when all these collective bargaining agreements come due, and it's all over the country, they're having this problem. Well, now you're in this position where the unions are like, well, listen, cost of living has skyrocketed way faster than our anticipated increases, so now we need to negotiate increases to catch up. And this is obviously a problem in an affordability crisis, both from the employer standpoint and from the union standpoint. So this is a liberal made in Canada problem. Yes, negotiations are usually contentious, and yes, it's usually most contentious around money. But the fact that the Liberals have legislated Canada into this position where all of these policies have created such a disastrous cost of living crisis and the hyperinflation on top of that, it makes every single collective bargaining agreement negotiation across the country, no matter where you are, no matter if it's government or not, it is a huge problem. And you guys are the ones that have to wear this. So then when they create these problems and then they say, rah, 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 unions, oh, but you're back to work. Like, this is the issue. And this is why when they talked to Pierre Poilievre about this, about the CN strike, they said, well, what would you do? And his answer was, wouldn't have gotten here in the first place. And he's bang on.
You put out a video on Twitter on August 16th where you said nobody should be expected to work for free. Do you recall that?
Sure do.
Great. You had a meeting with QP Air on July 3rd, 2024. They told you that they're unpaid for pre- and post-flight activities. You met with them on July 23rd. They told you they are unpaid for pre- and post-flight activities. You met with them on August 12th. They told you they work unpaid for pre- and post-flight activities. You met with them on August 15th, and they told you we are unpaid for pre- and post-flight activities. Then you order them back to work under their existing agreement, which continues them being unpaid for those activities. And then you put out a statement saying nobody should work for free. You knew they were working for free. They told you in those meetings. Are you familiar with the term gaslighting?
Kyle Seaback is ruthless here because he just went for the jugular and completely indicted her on this. And maybe Patty Hajdu thought that the unions weren't going to talk to the Conservatives and tell them what they talked about in these meetings, but evidently they did. And for those of you that may not have seen the video, check it out.
On the weekend, I referred the Air Canada dispute to the Relations Board. Both parties, the union and the corporation, said they were at an impasse. But it's not too late to get a deal. In fact, the corporation and the union could sit down today and find a path forward together, and that will result in the best deal. I've also heard the allegations of unpaid work. It's unacceptable. Nobody should work for free in this country. In fact, we expect to get paid for the work that we perform. And that's why I've ordered a probe into the allegation of unpaid work in the airline sector. We will start this probe immediately, and if employers are exploiting loopholes in the Canada Labour Code, we'll close them. Nobody should be expected to work for free.
So that's her video. I'm surprised. Why are you surprised? They've been telling you for a month. But now I'm going to do something. Okay, Patty.
You just gaslit every flight attendant with that video. Or are you saying that when they told you they worked for free, they were lying to you?
What I said was that we would conduct a probe to understand the perspective of flight attendants and the industry.
Did they or did they not tell you in those 5 meetings I mentioned that they worked for free in pre- and post-flight activities?
In fact, in those 5 meetings, many things were discussed.
But was that discussed?
Indeed, including the impasse that they found themselves at.
Was that
they
discussed?
they needed to resolve in order to get to a new collective agreement. And I will point out that 2 days after this was referred to the Industrial Relations Board, the parties did agree. And so the collective agreement...
Because they wouldn't follow your order.
Are you saying that the flight attendants signed a collective agreement that they don't agree with?
No, they did.
Have a collective agreement now.
They defied your order, but you didn't answer my question.
But they did sign a collective agreement, and you just said that they're still...
Did they advise you in those 5 meetings before you ordered them back to work that they were unpaid for pre- and post-flight activities? It's a simple question, just yes or no. Did they advise you of that?
There were many things discussed in those meetings. And I would say that one of the things that was discussed was...
I can't wait to put this testimony to the Flight Attendants Union when they come. You won't even answer a simple question as to whether or not they advised you of that.
I asked the Labour Department, to our knowledge, have there ever been any complaints of unpaid work? And in fact, the Labour Department could not find any.
CUPE ran an entire campaign on unpaid hours.
Thank you, Madam Minister.
I think it's great. I will objectively, Patty Haidu, when she doesn't want to answer a question, she's doing what she can to not answer it. So she just starts, coasting off the off-ramp and tries to go in a completely other direction to run out the clock. That's what she's trying to do. And Seaback and Janice and the Conservatives will not let her get away with it. If it was some of the newer MPs, they probably would, because, in day-to-day conversation, you usually don't interrupt the person when they're talking with you. It's just being polite. And unfortunately, some of these Liberals that come to committee, they take advantage of that. They take advantage of that, and they'll just keep talking and talking and talking and talking. Oh, your time's up. Darn. Mission accomplished. But this is where Cal Seaback and the really experienced Conservatives... No. You're not answering my question. These people deserve an answer, and you're going to give it now. So I love that he called her out for gaslighting, and I love that he said to her, I can't wait. I can't wait to put your statements to the union exec when they come in here. It's going to be absolutely amazing, because you're refusing to even acknowledge that they had this discussion with you. But ladies and gentlemen, like the smugness, and I didn't even show you the worst of it. You're welcome. I didn't show you the worst of how she was acting in this committee. It was gross. The way she just sneers at you and kind of smiles and saying, yeah, it's basically her way of telling you to go fly a kite, but in more severe terms, and that's written all over her face. So, yeah, that's Patty Haidu, and she didn't get away with hardly anything in committee. So great job, Conservatives, and it's going to be interesting to see how the unions continue to not support the Liberals going forward.